Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Hi guys, how are you all doing? I'm doing okay apart from the fact that I literally nearly fell off my chair, but we're not going to talk about that. Oh, no. In today's video, I thought we could do me answering questions that you're too afraid to ask someone who has an eating disorder. That was a mouthful to say. I hope that makes sense. Basically, I asked my Instagram if you could send me questions that you've always wanted to ask someone who has anorexia, but basically didn't want to say and was too scared to ask them. So I'm going to be answering them as best as I can. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, please leave a massive thumbs up. I hope you're enjoying Vlogmas because as I'm filming this, it will be Vlogmas and I'll actually be on holiday. So that's why I'm doing quite a few sit down vids for this week while I'm away. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed Vlogmas. Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't seen my other videos, go watch them. So yeah, let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. How are you all doing? So coming in at number one is, do you think we will ever get a sense of peace with food, or will it always be a challenge? I think as someone who has anorexia, I think, and is still really struggling with it, I don't talk a lot online about it just because I don't want to trigger people, and obviously this is supposed to be a safe recovery account, but I think it goes without saying that, there's going to be bumps in the road, there's going to be challenges, and I'm only human at the end of the day. Recovery isn't just an upwards linear trajectory. There's going to be times when it goes down and, you struggle more. And I think that is kind of where I'm at the moment. But I think you do see online, a lot of people who have recovered. And I have a friend who's fully recovered, so that gives me hope that, one day I will as well, even though it's hard to believe it. I think I have to believe it through other people because they've told me, I believe that I'm fully recovered. So yeah, I think that gives me hope. I'm not there yet, but I think, yeah, there's hope. I feel like I'm just so low down. Hang on, let me change the angle. Number two. Do you think your autism made ED treatment more complicated than for a non-autistic person? Yes. It's not funny because it was traumatic. But yeah, I think there's, I work, I have a job where my job is to talk about the comorbidity between autism and eating disorders and how being autistic affects, your experience of an eating disorder and treatment and everything like that. So it's a huge special interest of mine. It's literally my dream job. I absolutely love it. But yeah, 100%, because there's so much overlap between anorexia and autism. But at the same time, anorexia and eating disorders, they're not your friend. They're they call it a bully to be beaten, and autism is a friend to be made. And you're not trying to get rid of being autistic because you're always going to be autistic, and it is, in so many ways a strength, and just a different way of looking at the world and interpreting the world. But obviously anorexia and eating disorders, they're so awful to live with. And obviously you want to recover from that. So I think it's really important to have those two distinguished, is that the right word, in your head, so that when you're treating an eating disorder, you're treating the eating disorder and you're not trying to make the person think in a neurotypical way. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think it's so important to use the strengths of autism. There's so many strengths of autism, like relying on routine and stuff like that. While, that comes with challenges, it can also be a strength in ED recovery because, you can then make sure that, you're eating enough because it's part of your routine and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So I think that's so important. Do you have any food-related sensory issues that contribute to your ED, or are they all unrelated for you? I don't really see the sensory aspects of food. I think I struggle more with the social aspects of food, and you know, eating in front of people I really struggle with, like eating at certain times, and you know, I really struggle with like the sensory feeling of feeling full. That really, like, I hate that feeling. Which obviously that's contributing to you then, you know, changing the quantity of what you eat because you don't want to feel that way. So yeah, I think there is a lot of overlap for me. I think with the actual food, there's a few foods that, you know, I don't necessarily like the sensory like texture of, but I wouldn't say that is, you know, that's what's fueling kind of my eating disorder. It's more like, for anorexia, it's kind of a coping mechanism. And just, yeah, I think in a lot of ways as well, it does get you out of social situations when you have, you know, when you're known to have an eating disorder. And obviously for me, as someone who doesn't like social situations, it, you know, there's kind of that sort of thing. But obviously, like, you know, anorexia is absolute hell. And, you know, it's just, you can't even describe it. So, you know, no one wants an eating disorder. I think for me, like, anorexia is a coping mechanism not for being autistic, but for being forced to be put into a neurotypical person's life for so long. But also that, like, you know, I think it's hard to navigate life. And I think the world isn't designed for autistic people, and you know, it's hard to cope, therefore, like, you know, with that in mind, because it's so many challenges that we face, and that's not just because we're autistic, that's because the world isn't designed for us. But I think for me, like, getting my autism diagnosis was so beneficial for my recovery from an eating disorder, because, you know, it's just, yeah, it's just like finding out a piece of who you are, even though you've always been autistic. It's just so freeing. And you don't blame yourself. It's like, you know, you don't blame yourself for struggling anymore, because, you know, you're autistic, and that's, you know, that's something to be celebrated. And I think recovering from an eating disorder when you know that you're autistic, you know, it's just, I don't know, you can just, yeah, as I said earlier, like, distinguish the two in your head, like an eating disorder and being autistic, and you can just understand yourself better. Next up, signs to look for in others / yourself, and best ways to support someone you think has an eating disorder. I could do so many videos on this, because I think my key bit of advice is you have to tailor your kind of care to the individual. Like, you know, I can sit here and give my advice, and, you know, that's good, but it really depends on the individual. And I know some things that help me wouldn't help someone else, and stuff like that. But I think key things are being a good listener, being empathetic, and, you know, sometimes you don't need to fix anything, you don't need to change anything, you just need to listen, because it's lonely having an eating disorder, and it's absolute hell. And just being that listening ear is like, you know, whatever I'm going through right now, I know this person's going to be here through it all, because unfortunately, you know, you lose so many friends through an eating disorder. I have, and it hurts because it's not my fault that I got on well, and, you know, it makes me really sad. But to just now know that I have so many friends that are just there for me no matter what, they get it, I think that just helps so much, so much. So yeah, I think it's not always about like saying, oh, you should do this or you should do that. I think it's just about listening a lot of the time, and yeah, being a good friend. And even if they don't talk to you, just, you know, the offer's there, so they know that they're not alone through, you know, the hell that is an eating disorder. And in terms of yourself, knowing that it's not your fault can be really powerful, because it means that you don't blame yourself. I think knowing anorexia is not a choice, that is just so important. So knowing that anorexia is a coping mechanism, and, you know, I won't wish it on anyone, but I think knowing that it's not your fault, and you know, a coping mechanism, therefore that it's not something wrong with you and you need to change the environment in order to recover, because you clearly need, you know, you needed anorexia or whatever eating disorder to cope with something, so then you need to change the environment in order to recover. So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. Next up, was it a form of self-harm for you? I think this is a really interesting one, and to be honest, yes, I think it was. Obviously, I think a lot of people actually don't realise how painful anorexia is. Like, it's not just, it is a mental illness, but it is also has physical side effects. And obviously those physical side effects are extremely severe. But, you know, to the individual, so to myself, like, I could see them all the time, you know, and it's scary, but then at the same time, like, there's comfort in that. I think, you know, in the same way, like, self-harm, you know, it hurts and that distracts you from the pain that's going on in your head, and I think that turns into a vicious cycle. So yeah, I think anorexia is, it's obviously not a choice, but it hurts so much, like emotionally, physically, like, you know, everything falls apart and you literally have nothing. And, you know, it actually hurts, like, you know, in your body, because, you know, there's so much pain there, from different, like, side effects that happen. And yeah, I think it hurts, and in a way there's kind of something quite, I don't want to say comforting, but, you know, in the same way self-harm works, it is like that, and it was like that for me. And last one, do you ever give in to your hunger when you have an eating disorder? I think it's really important to know that eating disorders aren't just about food, like, at all. They, as this person said, like, you know, their form of self-harm, their coping mechanism, their self-punishment, their control, their identity, you know, all these sorts of things. And there's no one type to, like, an eating disorder. I think, you know, this person says, I feel like I don't have one because I eat. Like, every single person with anorexia eats, because if they didn't, they'd be dead. Now, I know, you know, there's a stereotype of what anorexia looks like, but to be honest, that is stopping so many people from getting treatment, including myself, because I thought, you know, I didn't have anorexia because my behaviours weren't, like, you know, were different to what I thought anorexia was, if that makes sense. But I think, to be honest, if you're even questioning it, like, you know, there's something up, because you wouldn't be questioning it if there was nothing up. So I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, I won't, like, say if I give in to my hunger or not, because I think it's down to the individual. I can't say, you know, my opinion, because you might compare to me, and at the end of the day, like, you know, every single person is different. But only 6% of people with anorexia are underweight. Like, you know, like, that is kind of, yeah, I think a really important thing to remember, and a really good thing to end this video on. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you found it helpful. I know, like, a lot of the things that I've talked about aren't really said a lot of the time, so I hope it was helpful. And yeah, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you very soon, literally tomorrow, because it is Vlogmas, for a brand new video. So yeah, hope you have a good evening, and I'll see you soon. Bye, guys.